How can you make your beaded bags firm? Hi everyone, today I'll be answering my most frequently asked question, which is how to make your beaded bag firm, sturdy, or strong, however you call it. And I'll also be sharing some tips to help you achieve that. So let's go. Now to start, I'll ask you a question. What is the first thing you will need in order to make a bag? Well, that is your materials. Our materials is what we need first in order to actually make a bag. And that leads us to the first tip. Use compatible materials. When making beaded bags, you want to use materials that work well with each other. The materials you use for your bags will determine how well your bag will turn out. What do I mean? For example, if you're working with a size 8mm bead, I recommend using a 0.60mm fishing line, okay? And if you're working with a 10mm bead, you want to use a 0.70mm fishing line. Then for bigger size of beads, 0.70mm fishing line works well actually. I use it sometimes, like the last tutorial I did, I worked with a size 16mm bead and I used a 0.70mm fishing line. You can also try thicker options like 0.80mm and so on. So make sure you use materials that work well with each other, okay? Now that we have figured out the materials that work well with each other, let us then move on to the next step. Let's make our bags. But before you start, check out tip number 2. Start with a shorter line. This is something I always do. If you can notice in my tutorials, I don't use excessively long amounts of line to start with. I always say things like start with a length you're comfortable with, or we're going to start with this much. Why? Because if you use a long amount of line to start your work, it will be really difficult for you to tighten your work as you bead. Rather than focus on the firmness of your bag as you bead, you'll be struggling with the length, and that would really mess with the firmness of your bag. So you want to start with a line that will be comfortable for you to work with, preferably a shorter amount of line. So always look out for that. Alright, so we have figured out the right length of line to start with. Let us then get to beading. But firstly, let us check out the next tip, which is tip number 3, and that is to flatten and tighten your work as you bead. What do I mean by that? Well, I'll show you. Let's go.
So this right here is a major issue. A lot of you have come to me with complaints about your work covering up like this. Now let's see how to resolve it. We need to start all over with our matting technique. So we're going to start with our first ring right here. And this is what we have. To proceed, on both sides of the line, you're going to add 1 bead each. On the left, you'll add 1 bead. On the right, you'll add another bead. Then you take 1 more bead to close that up. And this is what you have. Take note of what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to flatten it with my hand. I'm pressing it down so it does not curve up, okay? This is exactly how to apply the third tip. You flatten and tighten your work as you bead. Now let's go over to the next ring. We create the third ring. On both sides we add 1 bead each. On the left 1 bead, on the right another bead. Then you take 1 more bead to close that up. And right here we have our third ring. Let's repeat what we did earlier. What do? We press on it to flatten it like this and make it straight, okay? Keep pressing on it until you're sure it is very flat before you then proceed to create another ring. So you want to keep repeating these steps. You create a new ring, you press on it to make sure it's very flat before you then create another ring, okay? If your work is not flat, do not proceed to create another ring. You have to make sure the previous ring is flat before you then create another ring, okay? So that is what will help your work become straight and not curved. Now let us keep up with these steps until we reach a reasonable length, okay? Let's go. This is what I have done so far. Look at how straight that looks. Let's compare it to the one I showed you previously. I did not apply tip 3 to this one. Look at how curved it looks. So yeah, this is what we want to achieve. We want to keep up with these steps. Keep flattening your work as you go, so your work will not turn out curved up like this. No, we don't want that, okay? We want this instead.
The third tip was easy and practical, wasn't it? Well, it really helped you a lot if you apply that tip. Now that we have figured out how to flatten and tighten our work as we go, let us then check out the fourth tip, which is to make sure there are no loose gaps. Make sure there are no loose gaps. What do I mean by that? I'll show you again. Let's go.
Still on this piece we just worked on, let us then apply tip 4. We have to make sure there are no loose gaps. And this tip would be applied to the second row of our work. So let's start a new row. We're going to start with 3 beads, then we cross into the last one added. You draw that down. But this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to tighten it with all my strength, making sure that my fishing line is not loose, basically making sure that there are no loose gaps. To proceed, the right hand side goes into the next bead, then I'll tug up my work very tightly to make sure it is not loose at all. And on the left hand side, I'm going to add 2 beads and cross into the last one added. Draw that down, then drag it very tightly as well. And yeah, as simple as this is exactly how you are going to apply tip 4. Just make sure your work is super tight and there is no loose gaps. So let's do this until we get all the way to the top so I can show you the final result. I'm here now and this is what it looks like. Look at how straight and flat and firm that looks like. Let us now compare it to another one that I did not apply tip 4 to. Look at how this one looks like. Oh no, it is all curved up and not flat as this. No, we do not want that. If we look at it up close, you will see how loose it is. The beads are even falling freely. So no, we want our work to look like this instead. Look at how flat and firm this one looks. Do well to apply this tip.
Tip number 5, pass your line firmly around your work. Let's see how to do that.
This tip right here is where we are going to end our line. So we are going to pass around our line to end it. Trace the pattern back until you get all the way down. So let us do that right now. You want to do this corner by corner like I always say. Just trace the pattern with which it's made. You do not want to go out of the pattern. Follow the pattern just like I am doing, okay? So let's do that. And when you have traced back to a reasonable distance, you then want to tie your work. Usually I do not tie my work, but most of you have asked me how you can tie your work, so I'm going to show you how to do that. So right there at the side there, we're going to tie our work. Tie it multiple times until you're sure it's very firm. Then you're going to pass your line through one bead to hide the knot. You do not want to leave the knot out there in the open because it's going to make your work look really tacky. So you want to hide your knot in between one of those beads. Then you cut off the excess with the scissors. And this is what it looks like. Look at how firm that looks. So passing your line neatly to end it around your work would contribute to the firmness of your bag.
Now, if after you have tried all these tips and they still did not work out for you, this is the last straw. This is all I've got. Tip number 6, cut out some line and pass it around your work. Let's see how to do that.
To do that, you're going to cut out some line. Then you're going to pass it through your work like this. Pass one side out of it, then the rest of it is what you're going to use to trace through your work. Just like we did when we were ending our line, you're going to trace the pattern until you get all around your work. So the addition of this extra line will make your work look so much firmer. So let's do that until we get all the way around. I'm done with that, and this is what we have. This is how it looks like. Honestly, it feels so firm. This last tip is a game changer. You should definitely try it.
And that's it, guys. That is all the tip I have to offer you all. So far, we have learned 6 tips on how to make our beaded bags firmer. Let's do a recap. Tip 1, use compatible materials. You want to use materials that work well with each other. Tip 2, start with a shorter line. You want to start with a length of line that is comfortable for you to work with. Tip 3. Flatten and tighten your work as you go. Tip 4. Make sure there are no loose gaps. Tip 5. Pass your line firmly around your work. And the last tip, which is the last straw like I said earlier, cut out some line and pass it around your work. Alright everyone, so that's all for today. These are the tips I have to share with you all. I really hope you find them helpful and I hope they work out well for you. And if they do, please let me know. If you apply these tips in your work, I'm sure you'll see a huge improvement in the firmness of your bag. Please also share this video to your friends that would love to learn how to make a firmer bag as well. And I'll see you all in my next tutorial. Goodbye.